Hello, folks. I'm Brother Chad. Welcome to Ministries online Bible study. I want to thank you for tuning in, whether you're doing so through a flash drive, one of the MP4 recordings we burn to a CD and send out so you can watch on your Blu-ray player, some DVD players, and also your computer. Or if you're watching this on your computer on YouTube, I want to encourage you, if you want to feel like contacting us with questions, comments, concerns, stuff like that. Our email address is masterslanterns@gmail.com, masterslanterns@gmail.com. Also, you can find us on Facebook if you just do a search for us. On the Facebook, just do a search for Masters Lanterns Ministries. Or also, you can find us on YouTube just by typing in Masters Lanterns Ministries. You should be able to find us on either one of those social media networking websites. Now, put my mouse down and grab a drink. Now, today's study is going to be slightly different than stuff we've done in the past. Today, we're actually going to be taking a look at something that has to do with eschatology, the study of the end times or end time prophecy. We're going to be looking at the 70 weeks of Daniel. And I understand that a lot of people get confused by this. A lot of people get put off by it. But it's something that's really, really interesting. And, this is something that if you really want to learn, if you really want to get grounded in your faith, and if you really want to be encouraged, and you want to be amazed by God, this is something that will razzle dazzle you. It is not necessarily something that is easy to understand or easy to comprehend. Mainly because in this case, there's math involved. If you're anything like me, you're horrible at math, but it's okay because I had a friend, he's a teacher, so I was able to call him and he was able to help me with my math. And also I had a teenage cousin I was able to call, and she helped too. Before we go any further, I want to plug some resources. Hermeneutics. These are two books that will help you greatly. This is How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth by Dr. Gordon Fee and Douglas Stewart. This is the third edition. Don't recommend it. I recommend the fourth edition or the second edition. The fourth edition just came out. I haven't seen any complaints about it. In this third edition, there's a shameless chapter doing nothing but slamming every Bible translation except for the NIV and the TNIV. That is because Dr. Fee was on the translation committee for the NIV and TNIV. It's not because they're actually that good. It's just because Gordon Fee was looking to defend his work. Second book on hermeneutics I highly recommend is Basic Bible Interpretation by Dr. Roy Zuck. Dr. Zuck was a professor at Dallas Theological Seminary. Thank you, Chad. You're welcome, Chad. In fact, Basic Bible Interpretation is the only hermeneutics book I know that has a really good chapter on interpreting prophetic literature in a literal way, which is pretty neat. Now, I've read both those books cover to cover. Don't agree with everything in them, mainly when they overstep their bounds of hermeneutics. Is like, if I want a book on hermeneutics, give me a book on hermeneutics and cut the other stuff out. Anyway, secondly, what I'd say is after you've studied hermeneutics and you're really ready to engage with the text of Scripture, and you've read through it and you understand what Scripture is saying and you have it in your mind, another thing that can help you is a good study Bible. These are my two favorite study Bibles that have commentary in them. This is the MacArthur Study Bible, New American Standard, and this is the King James Version, Life in the Spirit Study Bible from Zondervan. And I love both of these. I found stuff where the life and the spirit got it wrong and MacArthur got it right. And I found stuff that MacArthur is wrong and the life and the spirit has got it right. And I'm very glad to be able to have these two wonderful resources which disagree with each other, and yet I'm able to go to and glean from some real brilliant minds. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and let's engage with the text of Scripture. For that, I'm probably going to need my notes. And I do have a couple sets of notes besides my handwritten ones here. I also pulled out my dry erase board, and I was going to have this set up behind me, but that did not really work out. So, yeah, I don't know if this is getting all there. There we go. So yeah, I wrote out my notes on a dry erase board, and I was going to have it behind me so you could see it. But two things. Number one, the camera just would not pick it up, at least not that I could see. And number two, I was even struggling with its positioning. So yeah. So anyways, let's go ahead and get into Scripture. So we're going to start with Daniel chapter 9. Now in Daniel chapter 9, Daniel had been reading the book of Jeremiah, and he had been reading about years. That was the topic he was reading about, was these years. And then he went into a season of prayer, a time of prayer in Daniel chapter 9. And that's actually what most of the chapter is about. It's Daniel repenting and praying for himself, his people, and his nation. And then the angel Gabriel showed up, and he was told to go there by God and to give him this message. And he actually said, in verse 22, he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding. At the beginning of thy supplications the commandment came forth, and I am come to show thee, for thou art greatly beloved. Therefore understand the matter and consider the vision. Okay, now he's supposed to understand this matter and consider the vision. Here we go. And this is where it's really going to pick up, and it's really going to get interesting. Verse 24, 70 weeks. Let's stop right there. That word weeks in the Hebrew is Shabuah or Shabuah, and what it means is a heptad or a set of 7. It could be a period of 7 days, 7 hours, 7 weeks, 7 months, 7 years, 7 decades, 7 generations, 7 millennia. But here, if we stay within the context of years, because that's what he had been reading about in Jeremiah, we stay within that context of years, it actually starts making sense. 70 Shabuah, or 70 weeks, or 70 periods of 7, or 70 periods of 7 years, are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. That's the Jews in Jerusalem. And here we're going to see 7 reasons why, or 7 things it's going to accomplish. 2, finish the transgression, make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. There's 7 reasons, or 7 effects these 70 weeks are going to have. Verse 25, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublesome times. Now, I need to focus in on a couple points in here, and you should make note of it. To restore and build Jerusalem, not the temple, but Jerusalem. And I'm going to explain why we need to remember it's Jerusalem and not just the temple in a moment. Unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks. There's your rebuilding of Jerusalem. And 62 weeks. There's till Messiah the Prince. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublesome times. Now, there's some significance there with that word street, but we're not going to get into all the little technicalities here. We're looking at the big picture here because I really want to get into math. One of the reasons why I'm doing this is because as I've been sick, one of my friends on Facebook had posted something about Jews coming to Christ through Isaiah 53, the suffering servant passage. And very true. Many Jews have come to Christ through that passage. But I think percentage-wise, even more come to Christ through this prophecy we're reading here in Daniel. But also, this particular prophecy is called the backbone of Bible prophecy. And we need to really understand it and take a look at it. So anyway, 7 weeks, 62 weeks. Okay, 7 sevens, or a period of 7 times 7, which would be 49. Also, a period of 62 weeks, which would be 62 weeks. A score being 20, 3 score would be 60, and 62 weeks. That's 434 years. You add 49 to 434, and you get 483. So the first 69 weeks should be a period of 483 years. But then it says, from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So in other words, from the issuing of the declaration to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the revelation of the Messiah the Prince, there would be 69 weeks of years. Now we need to determine at what point, and also in the next verse, after the 62 weeks, or after the 69th week, shall Messiah be cut off, or shall the Messiah die? But not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. So that's even talking about how after Jesus was crucified, it was like around 70 AD, Antiochus Epiphanes, however you want to say it, he went and he destroyed Jerusalem, and in particularly the temple. But anyway, we need to look at this, because what we're going to look at, because this gives an exact way of determining who is the Messiah of Israel, who is the Savior. Is it Jesus Christ, as the Christians believe? Now, we have a way of determining this from this text, from the issuing of the decree to rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince. We have 69 weeks of years, 483 years. Now, I'm going to talk about a problem we do have with figuring this out. But before that, I want to talk about 4 different decrees that were made. In 538 BC, in 2 Chronicles 36, verses 22 and 23, Cyrus made a decree. It's also found in Ezra chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. In 519 BC, Darius made a decree in Ezra chapter 6, verses 3 through 8. Now, a couple things. This was not for rebuilding Jerusalem. It was for rebuilding the temple, number 1. And number 2, it doesn't match the timeline, because at the end of those 483 years from those decrees, no Messiah. Now, the third decree is from Artaxerxes in Ezra chapter 7, verse 7. That decree came in 458 BC. So much, much closer than the previous two. However, Artaxerxes' decree was just a restatement of Cyrus's decree. That's all he was doing, is he was renewing Cyrus's decree for the temple to be rebuilt. So it doesn't even match up, because it wasn't even a decree to rebuild Jerusalem. It was just to rebuild the temple. Also, the time on it just doesn't really match up either. However, it's far, far closer. But no, this fourth decree that we're going to look at is also by Artaxerxes. Now, this decree was made in Nehemiah chapter 2, verses like 1 through 10, 1 through 8. And we do know from secular history, church history, Jewish history, all history tells us that in this period, these kings would write out their decrees, but these decrees would be declared and officially announced on the first of the month. And anyway, we have Artaxerxes' second decree from his 20th year of reigning as king. Here in Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 1 through 8, this is the decree we're looking for. This is the decree specifically to rebuild Jerusalem. That decree was issued on the first of the month Nisan. That's a Jewish month. Anyway, it was, and that's part of the old lunar calendar. And that was in 445 BC. Now, this is where things are going to get a little hairy. Remember I just mentioned that lunar calendar, and I mentioned there were some troubles in how we figure this out? Well, we're going to discuss those. This is where we start having trouble, and I'm going to keep this close at hand because I struggle with this part because I am horrible with numbers. Okay, so I already talked about the Shabuah and the 69 weeks. Now I need to talk a little bit about the lunar calendar. Some people call this the prophetic year, but you know what? That's kind of a misnomer. It's not really a prophetic year. It's a lunar year, and this is where I'm going to get to use my my dry erase board. Okay, now the lunar year, which is what was being used here, contained 360 days a year. We are using a solar year, and more than that, we're using the Gregorian calendar within the solar year. And the solar year and the Gregorian year has 365 days per year. Now, it could be said, and it has been said by some Bible scholars, not necessarily Bible scholars, but eschatology scholars, that these were 365-day years. They were not using the lunar calendar. Well, remember earlier when I mentioned about hermeneutics, I think some of these eschatology scholars should go back and maybe study hermeneutics just a little bit more. It's a basic principle in hermeneutics, and I'm gonna cite an amillennialist right here, Dr. Milton Terry, who authored Biblical Hermeneutics. The book is over 100 years old. You can get it for free if you have an Android device. It is on Google Play Store. Just do a search for Milton Terry Biblical Hermeneutics, or you can do a Google search for Milton Terry Biblical Hermeneutics PDF. You can get a free download of the book. It is a very exhaustive book, but it's also, from what I have read, it's still one of the best books on the topic of hermeneutics, the art and science of interpreting Scripture. Now, he's an amillennialist, but I'm citing him because he cites the fact that you understand oftentimes things written in the Old Testament by things that are revealed in the New Testament. So if we're going to do that, and we're going to understand the Old Testament by things revealed in the New Testament, then we get to go back to the book of Revelation. Now in Revelation, I'm going to cite 4 scriptures to you, I think. 1, 2, 3. Yep, 4 scriptures to you. Were they using the lunar calendar for the 69 weeks? Well, In Revelation, they're using the lunar calendar for the 70th week, the last week. We know that because in Revelation 11:2 and 13:5, which are the bookends for this passage I'm discussing, they talk about 42 months. In Revelation 12:6, it talks about 1,260 days. In Revelation 12:14, it talks about time, times, and half a time. Time being a year, times being 2 years, half a time being half a year. A time, 1, plus times 2, so 1 plus 2 is 3, plus half a time, half a year, 3.5 years. So here we have these 360 days, 360 day years revealed in Revelation. But then in the Old Testament, is there any evidence? Actually, yes, there's plenty. I could have, and I didn't do it. But there's probably 4 or 5 places in the Old Testament where the Jews, before, and I think there's 1 or 2 even after this, where they were using a lunar calendar of 360-day years and not a solar calendar. So the whole argument of these were solar years, we don't even need the lunar calendar, sorry, it just doesn't stand up hermeneutically. At least not in my eyes, it doesn't, and I really don't think it does anyway. So anyway, we also need to take into consideration, because we are thinking with a 21st, 20th century mind, and what we are thinking is 365 days a year. And it just didn't work like that. So when we say BC or AD, we are already presupposing 365-day years. It just didn't work like that. They did not have such and such a year BC, such and such a year AD back in these times. That didn't even come into existence until the 6th century with Pope Gregory, sometime in the late 6th century. We're talking 590 to 600 AD is when the Gregorian solar calendar came into popular usage. Now I could go into Revelation, but I'm and talk about those passages. I'm trying to save some time here because we've got a lot more time. We got a long way to go and a short time to get there. Because I'm gonna try to get this video done in 10 minutes. All right, so we have 445 AD as when the issue was made, when the decree was made. Now, we know that there's going to be 483 lunar years from the issuance of the decree. Now, let me go ahead and pull out my phone because I've written out some notes here, and I think these notes are really going to help. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my calculator on my phone, because if we take 400, well, actually, I'm going to talk about a couple of the problems real quick. Okay, now I've already said there's 360, not 365 days a year in these years or these weeks of years that Daniel's talking about. That is one problem. Also, when we're using BC to AD, we have to add years onto what our final calculations are, because when we're using these Gregorian types of understanding, we're losing stuff from the lunar calendar. So that can be a really big problem for us, and the easiest way that we can actually handle it would be to do some simple math real quick. Okay, so we know there's 483 years. So we start with 483. From there, we are going to multiply 5, because we know that there's an extra 5 days in our calendar that were not available in the lunar calendar. When we do that, we come up with 2,415 days. Now we take 2,415 days and we divide it into 360, we come up with 6.7083333. See that? Yeah. So how do you like that for math, huh? So basically, we're between 6 and 7 years that we get to add on to whatever we come up with. Okay? So here's going to be a real simple way, and we're just going to go ahead and say 6 years because it's not a complete 7th year. So we're going to go ahead and say 6 years. So we take 483 years. Okay? We take the 483, we subtract 445 from that, and that's opposing the 445 years BC until 0, but we have to remember there is no 0, but that's fine because we now have our baseline. We're at 38, okay? 38. Now, what year was Jesus crucified? Approximately 30 to 33 AD, okay? But guess what? We still have to subtract those 6 years. So we've already taken off 445, but really we needed to take off 451. So if we go ahead and take off those other 6 years, we come up with 38 minus 6 equals 32. Now, I know that's like really, wow, because just to get to 0, it took us, we had to go ahead and do the math already. And for those of you who didn't catch that, I'll walk you through it again. You take 483 years. From that 483 years, you subtract the 445 years in which everything started. You're left with 38. Now, you go ahead and you subtract 6 more from that 38, and you're left with 32, which is the year Jesus Christ was crucified. At least that's the year I believe he was crucified. I believe he was crucified on Friday, April 6th, I believe it was. It's in my notes written somewhere. But anyway, you have 32. Now, remember, that just took us, all we did there was we subtracted the 445 years from 483, and we made our adjustment for the calendar, and we came up with 32, which would have been 32 AD. How amazing is that? Now, how do I figure that this is 32 AD? Very simple, because now we take that 483, we subtract the 445, we're left with 38. Go ahead and subtract 32 because that just got us to 0. That leaves us with 6. Go ahead and subtract 6. 6 minus 6 is 0. That's what we're trying to get to, 32 AD, or even 31, 33 AD, but I'm pretty sure it was 32 AD. This is where it's going to get even more interesting, because I wrote a note on this, and I used it on a color notepad thing that I downloaded to my new phone. And I will make this available if anyone wants it. I can copy and paste it from my phone into my notes, so that if you guys want a copy of this, all you have to do is just type in for a subject 70 weeks notes, and I will copy and paste this and send it to you in an email. But this is what it says. Daniel 9 says that 69 heptads of 7 years, and then in parentheses it says 483 years, were determined on the Jews beginning with a decree to rebuild Jerusalem. The clock started in 445 BC when King Artaxerxes made the decree. Back then they used a lunar calendar of 360 days per year. So if we start at 483 and subtract 445, we get 38. Now, because of that 360-day calendar, we have an extra 2,415 days, which, when divided into 360, my calculator says we have 6.70833333 years, which is a hard number to calculate, so I'll calculate it as 6 and 7 years. The end result should be the year Jesus was crucified. So if we subtract 6, we end up with 32. If we subtract 7, the sum is 31, both of which are the possible years of the crucifixion, with AD 32 being the more likely year, since the Passover was on a Friday, and also it just matches up more. But that's not why we choose it. We choose it because that is the most likely from 445. However, there is a slight chance because there is a few extra months added on there, which is why you would go to 7, which would arrive you at 31 AD and a few months later. But we're going to go with 32 AD. Here's another way of tabulating it. Start at AD 32 when Jesus was crucified, subtract 483 years. From that we get minus 451, which would be minus 451 BC, 451 BC. So anyway, we get minus 451, but that's using our modern solar calendar once again of 365-day years and not the lunar calendar of 360 days that God was using with the Jews. So we need to add on that 7 years to subtract. I know this is where it gets weird, and I explain why. Because we're operating now in the negative. We started with 32, we subtracted 483, we end up with minus 451. That minus 451 would represent the year BC. Okay? So now, we add 7 years, or we add 7 to that minus 451, and we get a grand total of minus 444, or 444 BC. But there was no year 0, so we subtract a year from 444 BC, and we get 445 BC, the year Artaxerxes made his decree. Hold on. Another message. Okay. The year Artaxerxes made his decree in Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 1 through 10, according to the prophecy of Daniel 9, 24 through 27. Now, if that's not precise enough for you and you want to get really precise, let's double check our work. And we take this prophecy made in the 500s BC and we start at Nisan 1, or March 14th, 445 BC. Then we count upwards exactly 483 years of 360 days. How many is that? Well, it's simple. You multiply 360 times 483 and you come up with 173,880 days. We arrive at the day of Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem on the 10th of Nisan, or April 6th, AD 32. Now that part, I admit, I am not did the exact work on that. That is something I did take from another scholar. However, and I am relying on this without having researched it. But here's why. Because I've done math on this so many different ways, and I talked to that friend of mine who's a teacher, and me and him went over this for the better part of an hour and a half. We actually came up with, I think it was 4 or 5 different ways you could calculate this, and each way got you to 32 AD. Pretty amazing. The reason why, and then I explain a little bit more, and it says, the reason why this is so hard for us to calculate is that we use the Gregorian solar calendar, which was a standardization of the solar calendar that was made in the 6th century AD. The solar calendars had 365 days. The problem is that this prophecy uses a lunar calendar year of 360 days and didn't have AD and BC the way we do today. This prophecy, written over 100 years before the decree of Artaxerxes was made, and 483 lunar years before the triumphal entry of Jesus into Jerusalem, proved conclusively that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. And if he is the Messiah, he is who he said he was. Who did he say he was? He said, I am. For the Jews, you know that when Jesus said, I am, he was claiming divinity. John 8:58. Jesus said, before Abraham came into existence, I am. The Jews there understood him as saying that he is the eternal God. Sorry, I just had this quick text message. Okay. Now, we've now looked at this, and I've showed you mathematically a couple different ways you can arrive to 32 AD. I want you to be able to do this math yourself. I've already given you all the numbers you need, and I've already given you all the information you need. Because remember, I've given you the dates of the 4 decrees. Cyrus was 538 BC. In fact, his was October of 538, if I'm not mistaken, October 21st. Darius, 519 BC. Artaxerxes, 458 BC, but that was just a reinstatement of Cyrus's decree, or a restatement of Cyrus's decree. But then finally in 445 BC, Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 1 through 8, Artaxerxes went ahead and made a decree for the Jewish temple to be rebuilt. Now I know in this study we have covered a whole lot of ground. And I have finished the study with just about 5 minutes later than I wanted to. And that's fine because I'm going to take another 5 minutes at this point. I'm going to say thank you again for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email us masterslanterns@gmail.com. Look us up on Facebook, look us up on YouTube, whichever you decide, that's fine. Now, if you are not one who studied eschatology, the end times, and maybe you're really interested in it, but you really don't know how to study it for yourself, or maybe you're looking to read it for yourself. Okay, if you're looking to do a study on eschatology, a study on the end times, then I want to recommend 3 books in the Smart Guide to the Bible series. These are published by Nelson Publishers. These are paperbacks. These run anywhere from, the retail price on these is $14.99 US. And you know what? I wish these things came in hardcover, because if it's a book I know I'm going to like, I know I'm going to use, I like getting hardcover. But all I was able to get these in is softcover. I tell you what, the Smart Guide to the Bible series, this one here is on the book of Daniel, as you can see. I have the one on the book of Daniel, and I have the one on the book of Revelation. Both of these are absolutely tremendous, absolutely awesome. They have some really great quotes from great prophecy teachers. Some of these guys are good, solid Christians. Others are questionable. But you know what? Just on these topics and on the things, this is stuff an editorial team has decided. Yes, we may not agree with this person, but what they said here is really good, and we're going to include it in this. Now, these are study guides. These are not like a little book. They will have all kinds of stuff, little notes and stuff inside of them, quotations from other people. And I know, like in the back of this one, there's even some charts. And I tell you what, I was really wanting, and I wish I knew how to include charts, because there's several points in this. I would have just actually threw a chart in, which I actually have pictures of them saved to my phone, but it wouldn't let me. Like right here, here's a timeline on Daniel's 70 weeks that we were just talking about today. Here's a complete timeline on it, and it's a really good timeline. It's really awesome. I like it. Not as good as the one I have in storage, which is just a sheet of paper, but it's still pretty good. So yeah, if you're looking to do like a really in-depth study and grab a lot of knowledge, but at a beginner's level, then I would recommend this book very highly. Smart Guide to the Bible, Book of Daniel, but I'd also recommend you get the Book of Revelation, Smart Guide to the Bible, and also there's a third one called Every Prophecy of the Bible, I believe was the name of it, and it's in the Smart Guide series. So yeah, for $45, you'll get 3 of these books, and this is the thinnest of the 3. This is the thinnest of the 3, and it's the size of a notebook. So it's not exactly small, and this is 340, 360, 367 pages, and tons of great information. Really has helped me out. I did not start by studying this. I actually just got this last year or the year before, and it has helped me already since I've already figured out what Scripture is taught on this. It's really helped me quite a bit. Now, let's say you're not looking to do a verse by verse study, but you're just looking for a real good overview on eschatology, on the end times. Well, here's another really good book I highly recommend, The End by Dr. Mark Hitchcock. I just got this a couple weeks ago for Christmas because it's January 2016 right now. But I got this book a few weeks ago for Christmas, The End by Mark Hitchcock. And this is not this is a lightweight book. It's published by Tyndale, but it is in hardcover. It's a very well put together book. Mark Hitchcock right now, he's got some really awesome stuff on prophecy. He's already debunked some of this bogus stuff, some of these false prophecies like the blood moons, the stuff that failed. He's been, teaching against that kind of stuff since John Hagee first brought it up and some of these other people. But you know what? This book, $22.99 is a suggested retail price on it, and it is over 500 pages, like 504 pages. I think I just saw. Yeah, 504 pages. Dr. Mark Hitchcock, The End. This is scholarly yet easy to understand. This is not meant to be something like a college textbook. This is something, if you're looking just to have the knowledge and understanding, this is an excellent book to have. In fact, some people have, from what I understand, people have said this is like Things to Come by J. Dwight Pentecost in a much easier way to understand. In fact, one person said they read this and then they read Things to Come because they had a relative who read Things to Come by J. Dwight Pentecost, and they really were confused by some things, but then they read this and they were able to go back and reread Things to Come, and it made a lot more sense. Now, this would be just a good overview of the premillennial, pre-tribulation view. Now, if you're looking for an all-out scholarly book, here you go. Things to Come by J. Dwight Pentecost. This is pretty much the granddaddy of them all. Awesome. Things to Come by J. Dwight Pentecost. This is not the right dust jacket. My sister ordered this for me off of eBay, and the guy who sent it had 2 copies, and he sent me the newer book with the older dust jacket. So it doesn't really fit right. Anyway, here's the book itself, and I added a couple black bookmarks because, orange and black. I always thought orange and black went well together. But here it is, Things to Come, J. Dwight Pentecost, published by Zondervan. Now, this book is 633 pages. And I tell you what, in this book, he goes through everything. He goes through the amillennialism, premillennialism, postmillennialism, pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib, no trib, it's all trib. He goes through absolutely everything in this book, which is why it's considered to be so scholarly. Because he doesn't just give you an overview of what he believes, but he goes into all the different views, and he really does an excellent job. Dr. J. Dwight Pentecost was a professor emeritus of Dallas Theological Seminary. He's passed away now. He's went home to be with the Lord. But you know what? This is still, in my opinion, the top notch, or let me put it this way. I'd say this is in the top 5 of all books on prophecy ever written. And I thank my old pastor Jim for recommending this to me. Really is a great book. And these are selling for like $30 or so. Of course, you can find them on Amazon, eBay, probably a bit cheaper. But there you go. If you really want to study, there's your resources. Um, from Actually, I would say the easiest one would probably be The End by Dr. Mark Hitchcock. If you then want to study, I would say get those smart guides on Smart Guide to the Bible, published by Nelson Publishing. It's the yellow and blue books. Smart Guide to the Bible on Revelation, Smart Guide to the Bible on Daniel, and every prophecy of the Bible in the Smart Guide to the Bible series. You get those 3, and you're going to have a really, really great base, and you're really going to understand everything very well. And then if you just really want to go all out and see what all the different positions are and see what they all have to say, at that point, I would recommend that you get Things to Come by J. Dwight Pentecost. So anyway, I want to thank you for watching. It's been a real pleasure to bring this teaching to you. It's something I'm really passionate about and I really enjoy talking about. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have enjoyed presenting it. If you would like to share this video, please do so. Please do. Especially if you have a Jewish friend who maybe doesn't believe Jesus is Messiah, then watch this video a few times. Go ahead and make some notes. Send me an email. Just put as your subject Chad, and I'll know. Or if it's not me, it'll be Christy. Me or Christy or my other friend who helps with this stuff. They'll know exactly what you want, and they'll be able to go ahead and forward it directly to me. And then I'll either respond directly or I will get a text or whatever from them, and I will respond from the Master's Lanterns email. But anyway, I do want to thank you for watching this. I want to say I love you. Things have been really difficult on the ministry lately, but you know what? God has provided like never before. It's not even funny how God has provided for us lately. I want to say thank you again for watching this. I want to encourage you to share this. Copy the YouTube link if it's a direct upload, because I do send these out on flash drives and CDs, other forms of media. I want to encourage you, share this. Let's get some teaching out there. Let's get some good biblical teaching out there. Anyway, till next time, I'm Brother Chad with Masters Lanterns Ministries, and I'm saying good night to you, or maybe it's a good day to you. It's like 1 in the morning here. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and hit the hay. God bless you. Have a great night.